question here from 21 that just got put in here. Hey, Jason, what do you think about this horrible coach we have named Norvell and the consistent recruits that keep committing after a 3-6 season?
I'm sorry, what was that record?
After a 3-6 season, that's the point of it here, of the success that's happening after a 3-6 season.
We're cheering recruiting. Meanwhile, the performance on the field was 3-6. Got it. Okay, cool. Got it. Got it, Twitter fans. Go ahead. Do your thing. Cheer
one season, one completely obliterated, interrupted season that was only 9 games. It wasn't 12 games. We know what happened last season, Jason. You got to admit that. It's not an excuse, but it's reality.
You don't have to. Hold on. No.
Let me finish. No. Any first-year coach in college football last year had a huge disadvantage. First-year coaches have a big challenge anyway, because 9 times out of 10, they're taking over bad teams, because that's the reason they're a first-year coach, number one. Number two, let me finish. Number two, in this particular situation, so there's a difficulty in taking over a team for the first time. You're taking over a bad team. Number two, it's the first year. You're trying to change the culture, the environment, terminology, offense and defense, new coaching staff. The players have to get used to the coaches. Everything's different, and you got to do that in an off season. Okay, last year was not a normal off season where they could do that in person. So
Mark,
there is a huge difficulty there in trying to implement all that during a pandemic when you cannot meet with your team face to face.
We've literally spent the last year, and I love both of you to death. I would give you both a kidney if you needed one. Like, then I'd be screwed because I wouldn't have any. I'd give one of you a kidney, the first one who needs one.
Yeah.
I'm Logan. I'm looking right at you.
Yeah.
Both of you have spent this last year making I'm sorry, I'm going to say it like this. Both of you have spent this last year making every excuse possible for Mike Norvell. Yes, I agree with you. Go ahead, mute me because I'm right. You're sitting here making every excuse possible when, I'm sorry, you were one of the most critical people in the world when it came to Willie Taggart. And I'm sorry, Willie Taggart did not once have a 3-6 season. I'm not saying Willie Taggart was ready. I've been critical of Willie Taggart's time in Tallahassee. He was not ready to be the coach at Florida State. I will say that. And I think he'd be the first person to admit it, that he was not ready at that time to be the coach at Florida State. But you guys are making excuses for a coach when his performance has not equaled the expectation. Right?
I'm not.
You
act like he's been coaching for 5 years. He had one 9-game football season.
So I guess
and Willie Taggart took over a much better roster than he did.
Got it. Oh, much better. They needed a makeup game against Louisiana Monroe just to be bowl eligible. Okay, got it, Mark. They needed a makeup game against Louisiana Monroe, or else they would not have been bowl eligible.
Willie Taggart's first season was 2018, correct?
Correct.
Therefore, the players on that roster were from the classes of 2018, 17, 16, and 15. So he had seniors on that team that finished in the top 10 in the nation. He had juniors on that team that finished in the top 10 in the nation.
Brian Burns was the best person on that 2018 team. I'll say it. Brian Burns was an amazing player on that 2018 team.
They had a better roster when Willie Taggart took over than they did for Mike Norvell. I'm not excusing Mike Norvell. I'm not saying he did a great job. I'm just saying give him a full season at least. And last season, again, there was a reason they only played 9 games. There was a reason Arizona State only played 4 games. There was a pandemic. He couldn't even meet with his team from the time he took over from the time they interrupted spring practice with they got 3 workouts in.
I was in this house for an entire year working from home. Please tell me more about this pandemic, Mark.
There was a pandemic.
Please.
You're going to have to go online and look up the term pandemic to get the definition. But what happened was people could not make personal contact with one another. Therefore, it's difficult to play football under those circumstances. Therefore, it's difficult to practice football under those circumstances.
You've interrupted me, and I have not interrupted you. Mark, today, weeks before I absolutely have. Mark, we're sitting here making excuses for a 3-6 coach. And I'm sorry, I do not have anything to call against Mike Norvell. He is a nice guy. What I have personal with is the fact, and I'm sorry, I'm going to throw Logan under the bus. I love you, buddy, but I'm going to throw you under the bus here on this one. We've got a group of fans who are sitting here praising recruiting class, which is great. Our recruiting class looks good. If it's the number 8 national class come early signing day in December, be 100% happy about that. But here's what happens. Let's say we lose to Wake Forest. Let's just say, worst case scenario, that we go into that North Carolina game with a 2-3 record. How many of those recruits are still going to be there? There's a certain point where you have to just be honest and say the performance on the field matters. If we go into that North Carolina game 5-1, or excuse me, go into that North Carolina game 4-1, all praises to Saint Mike. I'll cornrow my hair. I'll grow it out. I'll cornrow my hair if we end up with a 10-win season this year. But it's not going to happen. We just have to be realistic.
Well, we know that.
Do you? I think you called for a 10-win season 1 week.
I never did. No, I'm not that drunk. I couldn't even be on like 24-pack of a Natty Ice right here in order for that to happen.
You may have been intoxicated at that point. I don't know.
Nah, I think there's a lot of. I think Norvell. There was definitely some things last year that had some question marks, but a lot of it too was defensively. I think there's a lot of strides happening on the offense. You also, looking back too, I mean, James Blackman was not the answer. So Norvell had to switch around and find a quarterback answer immediately. And it happened to be Jordan Travis. And that worked out pretty well, but still you didn't really have a passing attack. You're able to upgrade the offensive line and move to number 18th nationally and rushing offense. Mm-hmm. And so, that was just such and no spring really to work from. You had 3 practices, 1 day of pads, and then you're instantly into a lockdown. And as we know, too, Mike Norvell has done a lot of getting some clutter out of that locker room that was much, much needed, as we are finding out later on. As time moves on, you look at an NFL draft, which your 2 top players coming into that year didn't even get drafted in the NFL draft. It just seemed to be more of a headache in that locker room than anything. And, I think there was a lot of problems that Mike Norvell had to initially go in with, and he understood that. But it seems like they've kind of cleaned house now, and that they're trying to build that momentum. And we'll see. They've got to look competitive and such. But I don't think it's so negative like Jason might be doing.
I wish I'd take that buyout money. I'd take a percentage of that buyout money in a heartbeat. There. Stop. Taggart is a joker coach, right? He also didn't have a 3-win season. You guys are sitting here praising. I'm not saying you guys. I'm not saying Mark. I'm not saying Logan. You guys.
I never praised Mike Norvell. I just said let's wait and see.
Mark, you're interrupting me.
Have I ever praised Mike Norvell? No, I have not praised him. I have just said let's wait and let him coach a team and build a program.
Can I start interrupting you again? It was a lot more fun when I can do that. Can I start showing you some disrespect? Thank you very much. The point that I'm getting at is you're praising a guy who was 3-6.
I never praised him. I said, give him a chance.
So
that's all I said.
So if we go, let me ask you a question, legitimate question then. Let's say the bottom falls out this season, which I don't want to happen. I hope that we go 7-5, 8-4. I legitimately hope that.
I think but I think you're more entertained by the other way around.
I want to hear from both of you right now. Will both of you call for Norvell to be fired if we have a losing season?
Losing season?
No,
probably
you won't.
not.
It can't happen.
Not after 1 year and a few games. And don't compare it to Willie Taggart, because I didn't make the decision about Willie Taggart. I was here. I've said this 85 times. I would not have fired Willie Taggart. I would not have hired Willie Taggart. So I wouldn't have had to fire him, because I would have never hired the man, because he never proved anything that showed that he should be coaching at Florida State. But he should not have been fired.
I agree with you.
So I'm not holding Mike Norvell to the Willie Taggart standard and going if he goes, how do the numbers line up? If he goes 6-6 this year, he's got Willie Taggart's record. Therefore, we're going to fire him. No, I think that's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. You deal with the situation as it stands right now.
I have agreed with you, and I've said before that I don't think that if Florida State does finish 6-6 and he does have a 9-12 record, I agree with you. I think you should get 3 seasons to fully change it, to fully change and get everything in your mold. That being said, once you fired a coach after 21 games, that set a new standard. And if that's the standard, what I'm saying is if you're going to go by that standard for one, you have to hold every coach. I don't care about a pandemic.
No, you don't.
You have.
You don't have to do that. You can say we made a mistake. We made a mistake hiring. Of course, they're not going to say that, but we made a rash decision. That doesn't mean you can. If you set a bad standard, that doesn't mean you don't correct it later and continue setting yourself against a bad standard. That would not be brilliant. That if you make a mistake, you say, well, we set a standard, so we're going to just continue to make the same mistake because we set a precedent.
I should have bought the trademark to MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Then I could just, then I have my own.
So let me just put this into one more perspective. Yeah. If you purchase a horrible company, let's say you're a CEO and you purchase a company and that company's struggling, it's horrible. And you have to hire all these people. You also take on the personnel that's already in the company, and you're in the middle of a pandemic. You can't talk to them, only by Zoom. You can't actually go to the workplace and deal with them. You have all these liabilities, and you don't think that's going to restrict you. And we're talking about football playing. We're talking about a physical job that you can't do over a phone.
I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt that last year was a much different year. That being said, I'm not going to sit here and praise the off-season moves, which are good. I will say that they are good moves, but I'm not going to sit here like some people and jump up and down and say everything's better, everything is awesome, everything is great, when right now we are 3-6. Right now we are coming off a 3-6 season. That's the numbers that I'm looking at. I don't give a damn about the number 8 class on July 28th. I don't give a damn about the number 1 ranked class in the ACC on July 28th, because right now the two numbers that matter are we're coming off our worst season in 45 years. I'm not happy about it, but that's just the fact. And I'm sorry, if some fans don't want to accept that fact, that's not my problem. We are coming off our worst season, except that we are not the Florida State team that we were 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 2013 national title team. We are not that same Florida State team. Can we get back there? Yes, I absolutely believe that. I believe that we can get back to that point. And I do believe that Mike Norvell, I believe, if given a chance, has that chance to get back there. What I've said is if we have a 500 or worse record this year, you have to just be honest. You already set the standard. Then you look hypocritical. I agree with you, Mark, that Florida State should come out and say, we screwed up the way we handled the situation. They're not going to. But Florida State should come out and say, we screwed up with the way we handled it. If you want to say we screwed up with hiring him, that's fine. But you have to admit it and move on. Otherwise, you look hypocritical.
I will state one more time, very briefly, what I would have done with Willie Taggart. Had I inherited the situation and he was working for me and they went, they were 5 and he went 5-7, then he was 4-6.
4-5.
4-5, 9-12 with 3 games left in the season. Mm-hmm. Yes. I would have let him finish out that season, and most likely they would have gone 5 and they had left? Florida,
Boston College, Alabama State, and Florida. So they would have gone 6-6. I think they would have gone 6-6, which is what they ended up going.
You think they would have beaten Boston College regardless?
Yeah.
6-6, I believe, would have been a nice little finish to the season because BC was a bowl eligible type team. They were a decent team, and then they lose to Florida. That's understandable, top 10 team. And let's say they go 6-6. Well, certainly, even if they would have lost the 2 games out of 3 and gone 5-7, I would have retained Willie Taggart and given him one more season and given him pretty clear, definitive upgrades that were needed. Now, I wouldn't have held him to you got to go 8-4, and if you go 7-5, you're fired. But I would have said that's kind of the context of where you're at. There are mitigating circumstances and conditions we'll look at, injuries and other things, losing, if you take Clemson to the wire and you play really well in some losses, there are some things that we'll look at. But basically, I want to see an upgrade to 7-5, 8-4, and you can retain your job. But you're on the hot seat. This is your year. That's how I would have handled it.
So what would you say, from your expert opinion, what would you say Mike Norvell should do this season to get a third year. Because I'm sorry, whether you want to say or not, yes, last season was a weird year for everyone, but that was still technically his first season at Florida State. He went 3-6. What does he have to do this season to guarantee? And I think Logan said this before. They're not going to fire him. They can't buy out 2 straight coaches. But what would you say if you were the athletic director? What would you say is your benchmark number that he has to reach this season?
And before I answer that, Jason, how many times I said that they didn't play well last year. I never said that. I never tried to dress up their 3-6. I didn't think they were a good football team at all.
I wasn't talking to you. I was talking about a certain other person.
They played one remarkable game last year.
I never said that either. They looked amazing.
What is your number, Mark?
You're not going to like the first thing out of my mouth, Jason, but I'm going to explain it anyway. They play the toughest schedule in the ACC, and it's not even close.
Yeah, I agree.
They do. If he goes 6-6 this year, he's definitely staying if I'm running the show.
Yeah.
And I think
absolutely.
I think 6-6 is realistic, judging by the way last season went, because I can see us losing a game we shouldn't lose to a team like a Louisville or Syracuse. I can see us playing that way. I think the best case scenario right now, I'm going to stick with 7-5. I think if we're 7-5, I think that's the best case scenario, and that's including, I think, beating Florida and losing to one of those teams you should beat.
The 5 games that we've all pinpointed as we're going to be overwhelming underdogs for, I would like to see only maybe 2 blowouts, and then pull off one of those would be phenomenal. Yeah. Beat one of those teams, and then the other 2 be extremely competitive.
Yeah, it's and we talked about this. If they lose to Notre Dame, I never thought I'd say this, but if they lose to Notre Dame by between 10 and 14 points, I think a lot of Florida State fans will leave by downfield that night happy. I know Logan will. I know I will. It's like saying, okay, there's starting to be progress.
Mm-hmm. Mike Norvell, looking back at his time at Memphis, isn't really used to losing that much. I mean, he starts off at Memphis, and he was given a good team too, and it being previously ran very well. So you start off in that stance, and I think he starts off the season 8-5. He goes 10-3 the next year. 8-6 was his worst season at Memphis, but then goes and turns it around and goes 12-2, wins another 4 games. And it goes to really show what a terrible dumpster fire that Florida State was in when he arrived at FSU. That's the reason why he made so many damn changes everywhere. I mean, it wasn't just on the coaching staff, but it was everywhere. And the booster room, we're talking about getting all your high school director relations. Those got swiped and brought in with new staff members. It just goes to show, and also the players that he wanted nothing to do with anymore. And it makes sense. I mean, what Marvin Wilson did, I think a lot of FSU fans will agree with me, wasn't the smartest move by what was going to be your veteran leader. And look where he's at, not even hearing about him anymore, up there with the Cleveland Browns, which my Steelers will absolutely annihilate this upcoming year. Najee Harris will probably, if Marvin Wilson gets to see a little bit of playing time in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left, he's just going to get stuffed into the end zone for a touchdown by Harris. But
didn't the Browns beat the Steelers in the playoffs last year?
Yeah, congrats. They got a win there, and off of our team that was one of the longest winning streaks in NFL history.
11-0 at one point, I think.
Yeah, it was nice. That was more fun than winning a. Well, I don't know.
No.
We'll see. It was extremely fun going 11 weeks. Well, more than that, being a winner and never being a loser. But I'm glad the Bucs were able to celebrate and enjoy their good time. But
no, we don't praise the Bucs here.
Oh no, I'm glad that it was fun while that lasted. That'll do it for them.
Look, I want us to succeed. I really do. I will be there cheering us on with my Knoll game day hat if I ever get one for the Notre Dame game. I will be cheering on the Knolls. There's just has to be that level of realism. And that's what all I'm saying to the fans. And we've got a lot of fans here, a lot of keyboard warriors hate on me. I don't care what you say. I don't care. My opinion. You have
Jason,
I have my opinion.
Jason, I'm going to make one comment. You may not like it, but I just want to basically make sure of something here.
Go for it.
I just want to make sure that you are not taking out the injustice that you believe that was wielded on Willie Taggart out on Mike Norvell?
No,
he had nothing to do with it.
It has nothing to do with that. My, and it's even not so much something to do with Mike Norvell. I would say this about any coach who came into the situation. Yes, things were going downhill during Willie Taggart's time in Tallahassee. I will 100% agree with that. We came in, and it's the same thing. Once when Jimbo Fisher left and Willie Taggart came in, we're like, oh, we're going to be better, we're going to be better, and we weren't. Well, Mike Norvell came in, everyone said, oh, we're going to be fine, we're going to be fine, and we actually finished with a worse record. I'm somebody who just goes by the numbers. The fact is we had a worse record last season than we did in the 2 years under Willie Taggart. You can use whatever circumstances you want to. I understand, I get it, but that's just the matter of the fact, is that we had the worst record last season that we've had since 1975. That's where our program is right now. Do I think we're going to be better this season? Absolutely. I think we're going to be light years better. And I think if we do have a better record, if we have a winning record, I think that Mike Norvell should be praised for doing that. If we don't have a 6-6 record or better, I want you guys to bring that same venom that you have brought towards your support for him. I want it to turn into that venom. I want Logan to feel that venom. I want to see it come out of him.
I think someone comment on here real quick. I mean, the locker room to me, I think, is fine. I don't think that's a problem anymore. It was about, I'd say 20-80, and those 20 are no longer allowed or been advised to leave the program. And here we are. We're fine. Good to go. Clean house, ready to rock. And guess what? What's going to happen now is you've got a class that's just Mike Norvell's is now in that locker room, and then you got another one, and it just starts washing away what Mike Norvell doesn't like in that locker room. But right now, I think things have been settled, or you're just not going to be with the program, and you're going to have some players. You look at Jane Lars Woodby, who was a starter on defense, no longer with the team. He's going to maybe that's what will make Boston College fantastic this upcoming season. I predict no.
I was about to say, please don't.
I predict no, but that's just
attack him. The man graduated college in 2.5 years. It's taking you 5, and you're still there, bro. Please do not attack Jalen.
Well, I'm just saying though, his play on the field wasn't fantastic, but at least it's good in the locker room. I mean, in the classroom.
Are you really?
Yeah. Anybody that has any intelligence of watching film knows about the horrendous angles that are being ran and the awful takes he's taken at running backs and guys coming up down the middle.
Right. And you were a hater on him the whole time, right? You didn't praise him at all?
Well, there was a few times just had a horrible he didn't play good last year. Let's be realistic. For being realistic, didn't play good last year.